Hello wild people, welcome back to AK Wild One. Well, we just returned from the PCT and I'm excited to share some highlights of our adventures. For those of you just tuning in early July, Flash, our son, and our dog Burn and I set out to complete the PCT sections we missed last year due to smoke and fires. The good news is I managed to complete all of Oregon and the Northern California section I missed last year. The bad news is, and it's really not bad news, I was not able to complete the last 30 miles from Harts Pass to the Canadian border. Again, smoke turned me back. It was too smoky for my tender lungs. And so now I've hiked about 2,620 miles out of 2,650. I might return in late September to finish the last 30 miles, but I'm not sure. So, how do I characterize our trip? One word: hot. I can't really remember a time when the heat did not weigh heavily on my mind during this trip, except maybe when we were under a waterfall or swimming in a high mountain lake. As I mentioned, Flash and I took our son, who earned the trail name Blisters, and our dog Burn, whose trail name became Princess Buttercup. Our intent was to fly into Redding, California, go to the Parks Creek trailhead, and hike north through Oregon to Cascade Locks, and then find a ride to Mazama, Washington, and on to Harts Pass and complete the last 30 miles of the PCT. While we were in Anchorage awaiting the start of our trip, we found out that the airline had issued an embargo against taking dogs on our connecting flight to Redding, California. So we decided at the last minute to fly to Seattle, catch a ride to Cascade Locks, and then hike south. That mishap turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Within minutes of posting on the Washington Trail Angels site, a cool trail angel named Trevor offered to give us a ride from Seattle to Cascade Locks. And we came to realize that hiking from Cascade Locks south was a better option because it was cooler. During our trip, we had to contend with some injuries. Our son got some of the worst blisters I've ever seen, but Flash patched him up and he was able to hike 300 miles. Flash sprained her ankle during one of the worst blowdown sections I've ever experienced. It was frustrating. I've never seen so many blowdowns on the trail. But she used her long underwear to make an ankle support, and then she iced her ankle in the snowbanks we encountered on the trail. The low point was when we were so tired after all the blowdowns that we set up camp in a burn area with trees that looked like they were one short gust of wind away from falling on our tents. We were so tired and beaten that even that didn't seem to matter. Once we got to Santiam Pass, we caught a ride to Bend where we licked our wounds and recuperated and then regrouped. On top of it all, I struggled with plantar fasciitis on my left foot. The one character in our saga who we worried about the most actually fared the best: Burn the dog. Burn is a retired Iditarod sled dog, a lead dog that we adopted from a musher. And for about 500 miles, we were able to keep her cool with regular stream breaks and snowbanks. Burn was also a blowdown whiz. She had no problems with blowdowns. She could go over them and she could go under them. It took zero effort on her part. She does, after all, have four-wheel drive. She was quite the character, and you'll hear more about our adventures with Burn in future episodes. During the last 170 miles, Flash decided to get off the trail with Burn because the temperatures were increasing and they were getting too hot. And so she supported me along the trail using a van we purchased and which we then later drove back to Alaska. So, what do I have planned for this channel? Well, as always, spending long days on the trail can inspire new ways of looking at things. So, I've come up with at least 15 new episode ideas, and I was inspired to write some more poems. I'll also be working on the sequel to A Pacific Crest Trail Cottywomple, which is my first documentary chronicling the first 2,005 miles Flash and I hiked last year in 2022. I also have many other adventures planned. Expect to see an episode on a recent backpacking trip I took in Alaska, new improved tips for older hikers, a PCT gear postmortem, which is gear that survived and what I recommend, and what gear I'm abandoning. During the last few weeks on the PCT, I had what could be referred as the Great Gear Meltdown. Much of my gear started falling apart, and I'm going to share those stories with you. And I'm also going to plan an episode on how to build your heat resilience for a long-distance hike. I'd like to thank all the people who followed my Facebook page, AK Wild One, and offered encouragement. It meant more than you can think. So please stay tuned. I have a bunch of how-to and adventure videos that I look forward to sharing with you. And as always, the primary purpose of this channel is to share our adventures and our love of the wild outdoors. We want this channel to be a place that encourages those who hear the mountains calling to answer that call, despite the obstacles modern life throws in our way. John Muir said it best. Thousands of tired, nerve-shaken, over-civilized people are going to find out that going to the mountains is going home, that nature is a necessity. I couldn't agree more. And so, until we meet again, live wildly, my friends.